I am John Eric Bentley. I'm the voice of Barret Wallace and several other different things. How y'all doing?
Hey John, so talk about how you fell into this role for Barret in the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Well, for me, I had an audition through Skylark and the wonderful Rita, who is a casting director at Skylark, had me read for Final Fantasy, which I was a huge fan of. And then she said, "Oh, it's for Final Fantasy VII. The character his name is Barret." Actually, she didn't tell me the title. She just told me the character Barret. Well, because I played the game in '97, I was like through the moon. I just was like, "Wait a minute, Barret? Hold on, Barret from Final Fantasy?" So I answered all the questions that she was probably not willing to tell me because I knew the character very well, and was just thrilled and had the opportunity to do it and got the job, and rest is history.
So you have a very huge repertoire and resume of you've done film, you've done television, you've done video games, you've done cartoons. You're such a talented actor. Specifically, I want to talk about games. When you're doing a video game VO, do you treat it any differently, or treat it differently than like doing like a feature film or television or even a cartoon?
Well, the only difference is, for me, I do research the character and do research the circumstances that are given to the character and just try to work. I've always been taught to build, to work, to research, to read, to get all the information you possibly can before you bring this character to life that you're portraying. So that hasn't changed. But for voiceover, or for video games, the only difference to me is that you're not on camera. That's the only difference. But you still got to give it the emotion. You still got to give it the facial gestures, I guess. I'm giving it because you can't fake facial gestures with emotions. They just tie in. So it's pretty much the same research, but the intensity, depending on what the client wants, it changes things as well. So, that's my approach with it.
So in video games, especially Japanese translated ones, you're often given your lines in a list format, out of order, with no context. Was this the case for the Final Fantasy VII Remake? And if it was, how did that challenge you as an actor?
That's how a lot of games are. And sometimes that's how a lot of anime is as well. It's out of order. It's in different. You don't always go with the sequence or the flow of the scene or the flow of the game or the steps, I guess you would say, that lead you from the beginning to the middle to the end. So it used to be a challenge when I was younger because I would want to know the arc of the character. That's why, I realized at a very, very young age, if you don't know the whole story, if you don't know the beginning, the middle, and the end, which is what I was trained and what I was taught as an actor, then it's real hard for you to have depth or substance or for it to be impactful. So I've always made it a point to find the beginning, the middle, and the end, regardless of what I'm given.
Now, we spoke a little bit before we started the interview about you actually had the opportunity to watch some of the Japanese translated scenes in the game and then do your VO?
Well, I didn't get to watch. I had to hear.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
you would
even okay.
Yeah, you would hear what they did for particular scenes. So I guess I was watching the scene in which they had already voiced. Their translation, the translators were right there with us, which was awesome. And so they would explain to me what they meant during that time or what was said, or of course they had already translated the words, but I just needed to know in certain circumstances, I had to know what situation they were in or what was being presented or what was the beginning of this scene or the middle of this scene or, why is he saying this? And they were there. But because I had played it in 97, I kind of knew and remembered this is why he's at Sector 5, or this is why he's at this plate, or this is why he's doing this, or this is why he speaks to Cloud this way now. And I was able to, because of the work and the research and having played it, I was able to marry the two together.
So aside from a very few spin-offs, Barret had mostly been a silent protagonist. Where did you draw inspiration for this character? And obviously you've mentioned this already, you've played the 97 game, for context.
Mm-hmm. Well, inspiration for me was I was thrilled that I got the job, and the inspiration for me was from the '97, falling in love with the game in '97, but falling in love with the fact that Square Enix, or Square at the time, had made this RPG, which I was never an RPG fan, and I became an RPG fan because of that. And I was thrilled that there was an African American character. There's a black man who doesn't die. He's not just there, for window dressing, so to speak. He's the leader, and he was so many different things. Even in that vein in which I was playing it in '97, I saw the different, roles that Barret had to take on, and the different positions that he had to fulfill. So I wanted to give that justice when I got the opportunity to be blessed with getting the part.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between the remake and the '97 one, he doesn't say yo as much in the remake. Yeah. He said that like every other word of the '97 game.
Yeah, like I said, it's tough to me for a translator to you got to know the culture that you're gonna write about, in my opinion, especially in today's day. You gotta understand, you gotta know, you gotta research, you gotta talk to someone who is of the culture, in my opinion, before you start writing and translating. And you have to be cautious with what you write so that you don't have a caricature or a stereotype, and you give it justice so that everyone isn't, playing the game. Oh, that's how they are, or that's what they talk like, or that, you just don't want to do that. So that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to do coming into doing this character. For Barret, I wanted to justify who he was and have him not be this big brute, this black man who just shouts and yells and is angry and, shoots things with his gun arm. And I just wanted him to be way more broader than how people could have possibly perceived him back in '97.
And staying on track with that, there are very few minority characters in AAA games, and Barret is one of the few. Did you feel any pressure voicing this character at all, representing?
Huge pressure. Huge pressure. First of all, I wanted to represent my culture, my peeps. I didn't want to let anybody down, or I did not want to represent my culture in any negative way. And then, of course, there was my relationship with people, period. I just did not want to disrespect my family, my upbringing, my faith. There's a lot of different things that I just did not want to be reflected the wrong way. Don't get me wrong, people are going to all have their own opinions, and they're going to have their own takes on things, but I just gave it the best that I could so that he was a well-rounded character with an arc throughout the story. He didn't end the way he began. It wasn't a flat character, and that he had dynamics.
Well, I gotta say, as a player playing the game, you're one of the only characters that actually had speeches in the game, and they're pretty, and you just nailed them. They're emotional, important speeches that you gave, and it's, as a gamer, I can appreciate that. I mean, I cite you specifically in my review, just your performance was outstanding.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you dug it. Those go back to the old stage days of performing August Wilson and being Shakespearean trained and classically trained. Monologues were the thing on stage when I came up. And if you couldn't deliver a monologue, then you pretty much couldn't capture an audience, because, when you're monologuing, you've got to hold a person's attention for quite a long time. So I'm glad that you dug it.
Yeah, and it's spoiler warning for those listening. It's that there's the scene where...
no spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers? Oh, okay, well, there's a certain scene where something really pivotal happens that specifically affects Barret, and that is such an emotional scene. And it in the '97 game, I was watery-eyed, and in this one, I was almost crying, because you can feel the pain that Barret was feeling after this event happened in the game.
Yeah, that's where Square Enix, I mean, they really put it down with the visuals. I think visually, it's a stunning game, and they brought the they brought the effects to that one as well as with the music. Oh, the music is just beautiful.
Mhm.
So they did a great job at setting scenes, setting the feel for them, setting the emotion for them, and it made it a lot easier to add to the voiceover work because the voice the mocap character did a great job at that one as well.
So the game is 23 years old, Final Fantasy VII this year. Do you know?
Long wait, right?
Yeah. Are you aware? Like you obviously played the game, so you're aware of like Barret's history in the '97 game and like Marlene and her past, right?
Dine, yeah, where she actually was adopted from, and why Barret adopted her, and his relationship with her dad. Yeah, yeah. You like I said, you can't do this character. You can't do a character. You shouldn't do a character without knowing their backstory, as much history as you possibly can.
Do you do
Even where he used to work.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like it's so much history for that character.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do any sort of ritual before getting into certain character roles, whether it be games, television, or feature films?
Ritual?
Yeah, like some
You
people.
mean like
Some people like
before a
stretch.
game or something?
Oh no, just before you're about to get into a certain type of character. Some people do interesting things to get in the mindset of a character.
No, I don't do all that stuff. I mean, you know, I know people who do.
Yeah.
Before I play a sporting event, it's no different. You got to stretch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you gotta warm up a little bit. But for me, as far as voiceover, the only thing I really do that I wouldn't call it a ritual, but it's something that I practice is I make sure I do vocal drills before I go into a session to make sure that I enunciate, to make sure that you know, I'm good with the alliteration of things, that if I'm going to elongate vowels, and, you know, that's the English major in me, though. That's why I do what I do. I just wanted to sound right, and I wanted to be clear so that there's no guessing on, what did he just say? Or, I can't believe that he couldn't say that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's just me.
This is the first time hearing your normal voice for me. I feel like Barrett's a lot deeper and like a little bit more grungier.
Let's just say he's more gruff, and everything explodes from his chest,
Right.
and you know, he's a lot more gritty. His voice is a lot more gritty.
So the '97 game, we spoke about this earlier, had a huge impact on my life and my family. Were there any games that did that for you growing up? And if not games, movies, or television?
In during that era, or just period in me growing up?
Oh, just in general, yeah.
Well, I was an only child, so I was impressed by so many different things. As far as video games go, I mean, I just remember coming home and playing my little Atari 2600 anytime I got home from school, while I was eating French fries, you know, and I got into it that way because I was an only child and I was a latchkey kid. So I would come home, eat my fries, play my game, and then do my homework. And then by the time my parents came, because my mom was a school teacher, and my dad worked for a steel mill, I was able to spend time with them, or was continuously doing my homework, because sometimes that little video game took longer than expected, and I would try to finish before mom got home because I wasn't allowed to play before my homework. But you know, the things that impacted me were the fact that I could play something on a television screen and be entertained for hours. But I was an outside kid too. My parents made me go outside. You know, that's why I became the athlete that I am. And you know, I was back in the day. You didn't want to just sit at home and play a video game for hours, and you wanted to physically be able to do something. And outside was fun. So movies impacted me, of course. Just the arts period, it impacted me. Music. My dad was a big eclectic. I mean, the music collection he has was huge, and so I became, I guess, a lover of things that could move your heart, move your soul, move your emotions, whether it be visually, audibly, you know, physically, whatever it may be. So, yeah, a lot of things impacted me.
Now, obviously, we talked about this before the interview, but you weren't able to record sessions with your co-stars. You did this all by yourself, correct?
Yeah, I was always in the booth by myself.
It does help when your co-stars are around you and you can play off of them, especially in like a scene where you're conversating with one another.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, you think about, to me, from what I've played so far and from what I've seen and the responses that I've seen, it's a pretty doggone successful game, the remake. And no one played off of anyone, maybe aside from hearing how someone delivered a line in a scene. But I don't think you necessarily need to do that, which is, to me, it says a lot about the voice actors and the talent that was blessed to get these jobs, that how great they are to be able to do that without having someone in the room with you or without playing a scene in an ensemble. I mean, that's pretty doggone special. You got some serious talent if they're able to do that. But I don't think you necessarily have to have everyone in the room. I think in some cases for work, it pays off because you can pull on the emotions, you can see the person across from you, you know, all those different things. But I don't think it's always a necessity that you have the ensemble on hand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, especially with this game. Like, I've played games for the last, since I was old enough to play games, and I've seen some very bad voice work in games. But like, it specifically was not an issue in the remake. Everything came off beautifully. There was no awkward line delivery or things that sounded out of context when they delivered the lines. Everything just flowed together perfectly, which is great in a story-driven game that has a lot of cutscenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's pretty special when you can do something like that. But that's where you got to tip your hat to the talents. I mean, we had a great team, and it wasn't just the voice talent. We had great writers, interpreters, our booth tech, our casting director. I mean, it's a team, and that's just here in the U.S. Japan had an awesome team too, because they were the ones who sent the project over for us to then take over for the U.S. vocal patterns and changes and lines and everything else. So the Square Enix, like I've said this before, Square Enix put it down, man. They really did a good job at doing a recreation or a remake of such a popular game.
The game is being released in parts, so if you're allowed to answer, did you do more VO in your sessions than we saw in the remake, and are you contracted to be the voice of Barret for the whole series of the Final Fantasy VII Remake?
I am under what we call a non-disclosure agreement, so I'm not allowed to. It's called an NDA. You'll hear me say that a lot, I'm sure, but I'm under NDA, and I'm not allowed to answer that question.
That's not a problem. The other question, which I found kind of fun, was: are you currently working on Cannon Busters Season 2?
That's also under NDA, and I'm not allowed to talk about that one. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm not allowed to talk about it. But I can say that I think tomorrow, I'm doing we're watching Primar. We're watching a show that we did. Where I play Varys Trust. I think we're doing a group watch party tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So that's a cool thing.
And then the last question I have for you is, what can we see from you in the future, and what are you currently working on now that you can talk about?
Oh, well, yeah, we're doing that watch party tomorrow. That's one thing. As far as what can I talk about?
That's the key, right? Let me go through what I signed. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to remember, what I have signed. Although I do know that I just got an email the other day and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, this job that you worked on, it was under this name. It's going to be released tomorrow, and you can actually talk about it tomorrow. But please don't say anything until then." And I'm like, "What? I never knew that was Resident Evil." So I guess one of the Resident Evils that came out last week or the week before, I worked on that one. I couldn't tell you which one now because I think 2 of them came out.
Yeah, Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil Resistance.
I think it was Resistance then.
Okay, because I know sometimes a voice actor, they hear some lines and like there's really no character name. It's just like grunts and screams or like lookouts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I played a character. But I just don't remember, because I didn't relate it to being Resident Evil, and I'm usually good about it because I'm a gamer myself. But I was like, this isn't Resident. That can't be Resident Evil because the Resident Evil that I played did this, this, and this. So I don't know. So, it's a whole different thing. But yeah, I guess that one's out now. And of course, the games that are out there now, you can find. I don't like talking about myself. I've just been that way. I always think, I don't know, part of me feels like it's not being humble. But if you want to see the stuff that I've done, and if you want to see what's out there, or in some cases what's coming out, it's probably best to go to IMDb, Internet Movie Database, and you can see everything under my name, John Bentley, that I've done, that you can play, pretty much everything, and that's out there.
Well, that's awesome, John. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is out now, and you should buy it because it's an incredible game and it has really talented voice actors in it, like John, who just blow it out of the park with their performance as the iconic character Barret Wallace.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for your support. And thank you so much for having me on the show, man. It's been a blast. And the reason I jumped on this show is because I love the fact that you and your brother played this back in the day, and it built relationships, and one was reading to the other. I mean, it's just a special thing. So that's why I'm here, and I love what you're doing. So keep doing your thing, brother.